I had just settled down with my tea and the crossword problem I had been working on all day when the doorbell rang at 6:47 in the evening. Everything was warm and golden as the October light faded through my kitchen windows. As it always does in the final priceless minutes before nightfall, I had no expectations. My social calendar wasn't particularly full at 74. On Tuesday nights, I would do crossword puzzles and read whatever mystery book I had borrowed from the library. Since Richard's death 3 years ago, that had become my routine. The doorbell rang once more, with greater urgency. I forced myself up from the kitchen table and carefully placed my teacup on its saucer, the rose-patterned china Richard had given me for our 30th anniversary. I was reminded that I was no longer the young lady who used to dance in this kitchen while preparing dinner by the familiar aching in my knees, which protested as they always did these days. I could see 2 figures through the entrance door's tinted glass. One tall, one short, most likely missionaries or a salesperson. I nearly didn't respond, but for some reason I had to pull the door open and turn the deadbolt. The woman on my porch appeared worn out. My initial instinct was that her father's gorgeous red hair had become gray and was now pulled back in an untidy ponytail. She was dressed in jeans and a faded jacket, and her face, her face was etched with experiences I didn't know about, with years I hadn't seen. However, their eyes were familiar to me. I had gazed into her eyes as a baby, toddler, and challenging adolescent. 20 years ago, when I last saw her, she told me she would never want to see me again, and I stared into her eyes. Jennifer said, "Hello, Mom," in a voice that was almost audible. I was unable to talk. My fingers turned white from the tight grasp I had on the door frame. A youngster? No, a young guy, perhaps 15 or 16, stood behind her. His eyes were a startling emerald that must have come from his father, but he inherited Jennifer's black hair. I couldn't quite interpret the emotion on his face as he watched me. Perhaps fear or optimism. Jennifer went on, "I know I have no right to be here," and I could hear her voice trembling. "But I need your help. We need your help. Please, Mom." I wouldn't have come if there was anywhere else to go. I had been holding something inside of me for 20 years, but the word Mom crushed everything. I experienced sudden, hot tears welling up in my eyes. In an attempt to shield myself from whatever new suffering this reunion might bring, a part of me wanted to shut the door. However, a bigger part of her, the part that had always been her mother regardless of the years that had gone by, moved aside and widened the entrance. I heard myself say, "Come in. Both of you." I smelled cigarette smoke, rest stops on the highway, and despair as they poured by me into the hallway. As if anticipating a blow, Jennifer's shoulders were hunched forward. The child had a duffel bag that appeared to have seen better days, and I realized with a jolt that it was my grandson. I took them to the living room, the same space where Jennifer had studied piano scales, opened Christmas presents as a child, and had our last awful dispute all those years ago. Not much had changed. The mantel had the same pictures and the same floral sofa, but when Jennifer went, I had flipped her picture upside down. I couldn't look at it, but I couldn't get rid of it either. "Sit down," I said, finally able to speak. "I'll make more tea." Jennifer began to say, "Mom, we don't have time for—" But I interrupted by raising my hand. "We're going to sit down, have tea, and you're going to tell me what's happening. In that order." I had used that voice when she was 16 and arrived home after curfew, the voice that stated that even though she didn't want me to be her mother, I still was. She sank onto the sofa and nodded, which surprised me. With his hands firmly clenched between his knees, the youngster sat next to her. To keep my trembling hands occupied, I busied myself in the kitchen with the kettle. Jennifer was present. In my home. 20 years of stillness, wondering if she was still alive, and speculating on 1,000 possible outcomes for her fate. She had also brought a youngster, my grandkid. I had no idea that there was such a person. Using the wooden tray Richard had created in his workshop, I carried everything into the living room and placed cookies on a plate. Homemade chocolate chip, as I still cooked, even though it was just me now. Now my hands were more steady. I couldn't quite interpret Jennifer's expression as she watched me prepare tea. Our fingers touched as I gave her a cup, and I could feel her hand shaking as well. "This is Marcus," she finally said, pointing to the youngster. "He's 15. He's my son, your grandson." For the first time, Marcus gave me a direct glance. Silently, "Hello, ma'am," he said. No matter what had led them here, he was polite. I said, "Hello, Marcus," and my voice caught. "I'm very glad to meet you." While the old grandfather clock in the corner ticked away seconds, we sat in silence for a while. A great deal of time was lost. That was unrecoverable for so many years. "Jennifer," I finally said, "why are you here? What's happened?" With a clatter, she put down her teacup and buried her palms in her eyes. She had tears running down her cheeks when she looked up. "Mom, I'm in trouble. Real trouble. Marcus is in danger, and I don't know what else to do. I know you probably hate me after the things I said, after leaving the way I did, but he's innocent in all this. He didn't ask for any of it." I said, "Take a deep breath," reverting to my old habits. Start from the beginning. So she did. After all those restless nights wondering about her, the scenario that emerged was quite different from what I had envisioned. Although she had never acknowledged it at the time, our last argument was caused by her leaving Seattle 20 years prior with a man named Jake. They had relocated to a little hamlet west of Las Vegas in Nevada. She became pregnant practically instantly. She was only 23 when Marcus was born. "Jake was different at first," she said without looking at me. "Or maybe I was just too young to see what he really was. He got involved with people, Mom, bad people. Drugs at first, then other things. Stolen goods, money laundering. I tried to leave so many times, but he always found me. And then Marcus came along, and I couldn't risk it. I couldn't risk Jake hurting him." Hearing her made my heart hurt. This was my little child, the one who had brought me dandelions from the yard and referred to them as gold flowers, the one who had rocked me to sleep while singing lullabies. I was unaware of the fearful life she had led. "3 weeks ago," Jennifer continued in a voice that was barely audible, "Jake got arrested federal charges. They're saying he might spend the rest of his life in prison. I thought we were finally free. But then his associates started coming around, wanting to know where Jake kept things, information, money. They think I know something. They think Marcus knows something." For the first time since he introduced himself, Marcus spoke. "They came to our apartment 2 nights ago. Mom and I were at the store, but when we got back, everything was torn apart. They left a note saying we had 48 hours to give them what they wanted. Or else." I asked, fearing I already knew the answer. "Or else what?" "They didn't specify," answered Jennifer firmly. "They didn't need to. These aren't people who make empty threats, Mom. We grabbed what we could fit in the car and started driving. We've been on the road for 2 days straight, switching motels, paying cash. I don't know if they're following us. I don't know how far their reach goes, but I remembered your address and I thought, I hoped." Her entire body trembled with sobbing as she broke down then, really broke down. I walked to the sofa and threw my arms around her without thinking. The way she used to do when she was little and had a nightmare, she first stiffened and then fell against me. "Shh," I whispered while petting her hair. "It's all right. You're safe now. Both of you are safe." I glanced over her shoulder at Marcus. His dazzling green eyes were observing us, and I noticed something in them that caused my heart to ache once again. Although he was only a child, he was attempting to maintain his composure and be strong for his mother. A 15-year-old youngster who had been running for his life. Terrified, I said, "Marcus," softly, "why don't you come here?" After hesitating, he slid onto the couch. We stayed there like that for a while, 3 generations of shattered people attempting to find solace in one another until I put my other arm over him. I told Jennifer, "You'll stay here," after her sobbing had subsided to hiccups. "Both of you, for as long as you need, we'll figure this out together." "Mom, you don't understand. These people are dangerous. If they find out we're here, they might—" With firmness, I stated, "Then we'll make sure they don't find out. Jennifer, I've lived in this house for 45 years. I know every neighbor on this street. We're in a quiet suburb in Washington State, far from Nevada. You said you paid cash and switched motels. Did anyone follow you here?" She gave a head shake. "I don't think so. I've been watching." "Then we have time to think, to plan. But first, you both need to rest. When's the last time either of you had a proper meal or a full night's sleep?" After they exchanged glances, I had my response. "Right," I responded, getting to my feet with more vitality than I had in months. "Jennifer, your old room is exactly as you left it. Marcus can take the guest room. I'll make dinner while you both get cleaned up and settled in." Jennifer began, "Mom, I don't know how to—" But I shook my head. "We'll talk about everything else tomorrow. Tonight, you're home. That's enough." I listened to their footsteps in the hallway as they made their way upstairs with their scant possessions, sounds this house hadn't heard in 20 years. The 3rd step's floorboard continued to creak. When you opened Jennifer's bedroom door, it was still somewhat stuck. Everything was the same, but it was all different. With my mind racing, I gathered materials from the cupboards and refrigerator in the kitchen. My daughter was at home. I had a grandson living with me, a grandchild I had never knew existed. I had no idea who was putting them in risk. And in some way, this 74-year-old woman was meant to keep them safe. However, I felt something I hadn't experienced before Richard's passing as I cut veggies and boiled water for pasta gole. It had been a very silent and deserted house. Even if that life came with danger and 20 years of unresolved hurt, it was now full of life once more. For 20 years, I had been wondering why Jennifer had left, what I had done wrong, and whether she had ever considered me. None of those questions appeared to matter as much as I had assumed now that she was upstairs in her childhood bedroom. My family's safety was the only thing that mattered. By the time Jennifer returned downstairs, the pasta was nearly finished. She had taken a shower and changed into fresh clothing, a basic t-shirt and sweatpants that gave her a youthful appearance and helped her resemble the girl I recalled around her shoulders. Her damp hair flowed loosely. Uncertain, she inquired from the doorway, "Can I help?" "Set the table," I murmured, gesturing to the cupboard that had formerly housed our dishes, the good plates, not the everyday ones. There were only 4 settings left, so she smiled slightly at me and took out the china with the rose pattern. Over the years, 4 had broken, victims of time and my own negligence in the face of loss. We moved around each other in the kitchen as we used to, working in quiet. She recalled the location of the serving spoons, napkins, and silverware drawer memories of a life spent here in the past. She set the plates on the dining room table and added, "Marcus is asleep." "He was asleep before his head hit the pillow. I don't think he's had a real sleep in weeks. He's been too worried, too scared." I remarked, "He's a brave boy. I can see that." "He shouldn't have to be." Jennifer's voice broke. "He's too brave." He should be worrying about homework and girls and whether he'll make the basketball team. Instead, he's been watching over his shoulder, keeping kitchen knives under his pillow at night, learning to recognize cars that might be following us. As Jennifer usually liked, I tossed spaghetti onto the dishes, topped with sauce and a sprinkling of Parmesan. Come, eat. We'll talk. We sat at the table in the dining room where we had eaten thousands of meals together as she grew up. How many times had Richard sat at the head of this table, laughing at her jokes, asking her about her day, and offering to help with her arithmetic homework. When she was a teenager, how many dinners had ended in confrontations, with me holding back tears as she stormed out to her room. Jennifer abruptly remarked, "I'm sorry, Mom," as she looked at her plate. "For everything. For the things I said the last time I saw you. For leaving. For not calling, not writing, not even letting you know I was alive. For keeping Marcus from you. For all of it." I cautiously put down my fork. "Why did you say those things? Why did you leave like that?" She pushed noodles around her plate and remained silent for a long time. Her voice was so quiet that I had to bend forward to hear it when she eventually spoke. "Because I was 22 and stupid, and in love with someone who was completely wrong for me. And you knew it. You and Dad both knew it, and you tried to tell me, but I wouldn't listen. And when you said I couldn't bring Jake here for Thanksgiving, when you said he wasn't welcome in this house," I concluded by saying, "you felt like we were choosing for you, like we didn't trust your judgment. I thought you were trying to control my life. I thought you didn't believe I was adult enough to make my own decisions." She cracked up. "Turns out you were right. Jake was exactly what you thought he was. Worse, actually. But by the time I figured that out, I was pregnant, and I'd burned every bridge back to you. I was too proud to come crawling back and admit I'd made a mistake, too ashamed. I grabbed her hand from the other side of the table. Jennifer, you were my daughter before you left, and you're my daughter now. Nothing you could have done would have changed that. Yes, I was angry. Yes, I was hurt. But if you'd called, if you'd reached out at any point in these 20 years, I would have been there. I would have helped." Her cheeks were wet with tears. "I wanted to call so many times. When Marcus was born, when he was sick with pneumonia when he was 3, when he started school, every Christmas, every birthday. But so much time had passed, and the longer I waited, the harder it got. And then Dad died. I saw his obituary online, and I knew I'd waited too long. I'd lost my chance. I said, 'Your father loved you until the very end,' with tears in my eyes. Do you know what he said right before he passed? He was lying in that hospital bed, hardly conscious, and he opened his eyes and looked at me and said, 'Tell Jenny I forgive her. Tell her to come home.' Those were almost his last words. He was waiting for you." Jennifer covered her face with her hands as she sobbed. "I didn't know. I thought he'd hate me for what I said, for leaving. He missed you. We both missed you. Every single day." Together, we sobbed deeply at that moment, releasing 20 years of pent-up sorrow, regret, and desire. We didn't mind that the pasta got cold on our plates. Sometimes it's necessary to utterly collapse before you can begin to rebuild. After we had calmed down and were using paper napkins to wipe our eyes and blow our nostrils, Jennifer inquired, "How did Dad die?" The obituary just said peacefully, surrounded by family, saying, "Heart attack. Quick." He was in his workshop one minute, building a bookshelf for the library's fundraiser, and gone the next. They said he probably didn't feel any pain. That was 3 years ago. The house has been very quiet since then. I'm sorry I wasn't here. I squeezed her hand and said, "You're here now. That's what matters. Now, tell me more about this situation with Jake's associates. What exactly do they think you have?" She inhaled nervously, Before diving into the specifics, she said that Jake had been a member of a wider criminal group, mostly money laundering, but also stolen goods and drugs. The FBI had raided their flat when he was arrested, seizing laptops, documents, and other items. Jake had evidently stored backup files, which he had referred to as insurance, transaction logs, participant names, and account information material that, in the wrong hands, might kill a lot of dangerous individuals. Jake's associates think he gave me access to these files, Jennifer stated, or that I know where he hid them. But I swear, Mom, I know nothing. Jake kept me in the dark about everything. I didn't even know the full extent of what he was doing until the FBI came. All I knew was that we always had money. He always came home late, and I shouldn't ask questions. And Marcus? He knows even less than I do, but these people don't care about the truth. They think we're lying, hiding something, and if they can't get to Jake in prison, they'll use us to pressure him. She trembled. Mom, I'm so scared. Not for me, but for Marcus. He's just a kid. He deserves a normal life, a chance to grow up without fear. That's why I came here. If something happens to me, if they find me, I need to know he'll be safe. I need to know someone will take care of him. I felt the weight of her request descend upon me. She wasn't merely seeking short-term housing. If she didn't make it through this, she asked me to take on the role of guardian for Marcus to provide the stable home she was unable to provide for her grandson, whom I had just met. I firmly stated, "Nothing's going to happen to you. We're going to figure this out, Jennifer. We're going to keep both of you safe." How? Mom, you don't understand who these people are. They have resources, connections, money. They've probably already tracked the car we drove here. They might already know where we are. Then we'll deal with that when it comes. But Jennifer, running and hiding isn't a permanent solution. Eventually, you'll run out of money, out of places to go. We need a different approach. Like what? Going to the police? I tried that already. They said without specific threats or evidence of who's after us, there's nothing they can do. Jake's arrest is federal. The people threatening us are ghosts. No names, no faces we can identify. Just voices on the phone and notes left in our apartment. I got up and began to clean the dishes while considering my options. Physically, I was not the woman I once was at 74, but my mind was as keen as ever. Before I retired, I worked for some of Seattle's top defense lawyers for 40 years as a legal secretary. I understood how the system functioned, how criminals behaved, and how to distinguish between threats and real danger. Tomorrow, I replied, we're going to make some calls. I have friends who might be able to help, people who've dealt with situations like this before, and we're going to teach Marcus and you how to be invisible, at least for a while. No social media, no contact with anyone from your old life, no patterns that can be tracked. This house is in my name, and I paid off the mortgage years ago. There's no paper trail connecting you to this address. Mom, I can't ask you to... I fixed her with the same expression that worked on her when she was 14. You're not asking, I'm telling you. This is what we're doing. You came to me for help, and I'm helping. But we're doing this smart, not scared, understood? She grinned in spite of everything. It's a tiny one, but genuine. Yes, ma'am. I sat in Richard's old chair in the living room that evening after Jennifer had gone upstairs to see how Marcus was doing and then gone to her own room. As ancient houses do, the house settled around me and creaked. My grandson and daughter were sleeping under my roof somewhere above me, safe. For tonight at least, I pondered what Richard would say if he were present. He would have that sparkle in his eye that showed he liked my unyielding resolve, but he would probably say something about me being too old for this kind of drama. He had also been that way, protective of his family and prepared to confront any harm to those he cared about. I muttered, I hope I'm doing the right thing. To his memories in the empty room, I hope I'm strong enough for this. I knew I had no other option, though, even as I said it. Jennifer had returned home. She had returned home after I had been silent, wondering and thinking I would never see her again for 20 years. She also brought a grandson who had someone else's green eyes and my daughter's fortitude, a piece of the future I had feared I had lost. I would keep them safe. I would do whatever it took to protect my family, no matter how long it took. I would have allowed her to leave that door 20 years ago. I would never let her down again. I eventually forced myself to get out of the recliner and go to bed when the grandfather clock struck midnight. There would be fresh obstacles to overcome and anxieties to confront tomorrow. However, my house was once again filled tonight. I wasn't alone tonight, and that felt like hope in spite of everything. It smelled like strong coffee, the kind Jennifer used to brew when she lived at home, when I woke up the following morning. For a split second, I believed I had spent the whole night before in a dream. My emotions performed a complex dance of fear and ecstasy as I recalled. 6:15 was the time on the kitchen clock. Although I had always been an early riser, it seemed that Jennifer was as well. She was sitting at the kitchen table, holding a mug in both hands, looking out the window at the backyard, where morning light was just starting to peek through the oak trees. When I came downstairs in my robe, I said, "Morning," gently, so as not to wake her. I noticed that she had hardly slept when she turned. Her eyes were darkened by dark circles, and the side of her hair where she had been sleeping down had been mussed. "Morning, Mom. I hope I didn't wake you. I couldn't sleep." Understandable. I joined her at the table and poured a cup for myself from the pot she had prepared. A robin hopped across the yard outside, searching for breakfast. As if nothing had changed, life went on as usual. "Did Marcus sleep?" She grinned a little and said, "Like a log. I checked on him an hour ago. He was still out cold. He talked about you before he fell asleep yesterday. Asked if you were really his grandmother, if we were really going to stay here for a while." "What did you tell him?" "That, yes, you're really his grandmother, and that I hoped we could stay, but I wasn't sure. I've learned not to make promises I can't keep." She sipped on her coffee. "He wanted to know what you're like. I realized I don't even know how to answer that anymore. I knew you 20 years ago, but people change. I've changed. You must have too." As I watched the robin discover a worm and take off with its treasure, I thought about this. I suppose I have. I'm older, obviously. Slower your father's death changed me, made me quieter, more careful with time. After you left, I threw myself into work for a long time. Then Richard got sick and work didn't matter anymore. Only being with him mattered. When he died, I thought... I stopped, startled by the feelings welling up in my chest. I thought I was done, that the important parts of my life were over. And now? I looked into her eyes and said, "Now I'm not so sure. Maybe there are still chapters left to write. Maybe I'm not done being useful after all." For a few minutes, we sat in cozy stillness. This tentative reconnection was odd. In addition to being mother and daughter, we were also strangers getting to know one another again. What a long 20 years. Both of us had lived whole lives that the other was unaware of. Jennifer continued, "I need to tell you something, at last, about why I really came back, beyond just the immediate danger." My coffee cooled in my hands as I waited. Marcus doesn't know his father is a criminal. I mean, he knows Jake got arrested, knows we had to leave because of it. But I've tried to shield him from the worst of it, the drugs, the violence, all the things Jake was really involved in. As far as Marcus knows, his father made some business mistakes and got in over his head. You're trying to protect him. I'm trying to let him be a kid for as long as possible. He already grew up too fast, seeing things no child should see, even when I tried to hide it. Jake had a temper. He never hit Marcus. I would have left for good if he had. But Marcus heard things, saw me with bruises I tried to cover up. Her voice cracked. I failed him, Mom. I stayed in that situation way too long, let my son grow up in a house full of fear because I was too scared to leave. Jennifer. No, let me finish. When we left Nevada, when we got in that car and started driving, Marcus asked me where we were going, and I realized I didn't have an answer. I had no plan, no destination, nowhere safe to take him. And then I thought about this house, about you, about how you always kept us safe when I was growing up, how you always knew what to do when things went wrong. And I thought, if there's anyone in the world who might help us, who might forgive me enough to help us, it would be you. She was crying once more, her face streaming with silent sobs. So I came here not just because we needed a place to hide. I came here because Marcus deserves to know his grandmother. He deserves to be part of a real family, the kind that doesn't lie and hide things, the kind that sits together at the dinner table without fear. I want him to have what I threw away, even if it's just for a little while. I grabbed both of her hands and held them in mine. Then we'll give him that, for as long as we can. We both turned when we heard a voice coming from the doorway. Give me what? Richard's pajamas, the only men's clothes left in the house, were too large for Marcus, who was standing there in them. He was wiping sleep from his eyes, and his dark hair was sticking up in all directions, yet he was eyeing us with keen intelligence. Jennifer responded, "Good morning, sweetheart," as she wiped her eyes rapidly. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in weeks." He approached the coffee pot, stopped, and said, "Is it okay if I have some coffee?" To which I replied, "I look at you." "Of course," I responded. "Mugs are in the cabinet above the pot. Help yourself to anything in the kitchen. This is your home now." He joined us at the table after pouring coffee and adding milk and sugar. We were simply three individuals enjoying coffee in the morning, just like any other family, for a little period, as if there were no such violent men in Nevada, as if 20 years apart had never occurred. Marcus glanced between us and asked, "So what's the plan?" "We can't stay here forever. Those guys are looking for us. Eventually they'll check everything. Phone records, credit cards, known associates. It's just a matter of time." His candor and straightforward analysis of the situation shocked me. He sounded more than 15 years old. "You've thought about this a lot." "I've had a lot of time to think. Mom tries to protect me, but I'm not a kid anymore. I know what Dad did. I know what kind of people he worked with, and I know they don't make threats they don't intend to follow through on." Marcus shook his head, but Jennifer was stunned. "Mom, I'm not stupid. I heard the phone calls. I saw the guys who came to our apartment looking for Dad. I know this is serious." Saying, "You're right. I chose to treat him like the bright young man he was." It is serious, which is why we need to be smart about this, Jennifer. Did Jake ever mention names? Specific people he worked with? She paused to reflect. There was someone he called Romano. I don't know if that was a first name or last name. Jake would take calls from him late at night, and he'd always send me out of the room. But I could hear him through the door sometimes. He was always respectful when he talked to Romano, almost scared of him. "Romano," I said again. "That's something. Marcus, do you remember any names?" "There was a guy called Snake who came to the house a few times. Skinny guy with tattoos on his neck, and Dad mentioned someone named Vasquez once, but I don't think I ever met him." As someone who had always made lists, I took out a notepad and jotted down the names. It was a beginning, but not much. "Here's what I'm thinking. We need information. We need to understand who these people are, what they really want, and what they're capable of. And we need to know if they've actually tracked you here, or if you're safe for the moment. Jennifer questioned, "How do we find that out without exposing ourselves?" "I have a friend, Alan Mitchell. He was a private investigator before he retired. He still has contacts in law enforcement, and he owes me a favor. A big one. I helped his daughter with some legal troubles a few years ago. I'll call him this morning, see if he can dig up information on these people without alerting anyone to where you are." "Mom, that could put your friend in danger. Alan can take care of himself. And if there's one thing I learned working with criminal defense attorneys for 40 years, it's that information is power right now. We're running blind. We need to see what we're up against." Marcus was giving a nod. "That makes sense. But what do we do while we're waiting? We can't just sit here." "Actually, that's exactly what we do," I asserted. "You both stay inside, away from windows. No phone calls to anyone from your old life. No internet searches on anything connected to Nevada or Jake or any of this. We become invisible. As far as anyone knows, you don't exist." Marcus only nodded once again, as if it made perfect sense, even if it sounded paranoid to me. This child had learned how to hide from an early age. The idea infuriated me. Angry at Jake, angry at the circumstance, angry at whoever had made a 15-year-old so cautious and streetwise. Jennifer and Marcus stayed upstairs while I called Alan after breakfast, which consisted of pancakes. I was happy to see Marcus finish 3 and want more. "On the second ring," he answered, his rough voice instantly identifiable. "Eleanor Sterling. It's been a while." "Hi, Alan. I need your help." I gave him the short version. My daughter and my grandson had returned, and they were in danger from the criminal associates of her ex-partner. We needed to know who was searching for them and how serious the threat was. Alan deserves praise for avoiding pointless inquiries. He uttered, "Give me the names you have." I gave him the list: Vasquez, Romano, and Snake. "Okay, I'll put out some feelers. See what comes back. These are connected to Jake Morrison. Jake Morrison. He was arrested 3 weeks ago on federal charges out of Nevada. I heard keyboard typing." "Got him. Yeah, this is a big case. Money laundering, drug trafficking, organized crime ties. FBI's been building this for years." Further typing. "Eleanor, your daughter's ex was involved with some serious people. This isn't small-time stuff." I gathered that. "How serious is the threat to Jennifer and Marcus? Let me do some digging and get back to you. But Eleanor, be careful. If these people think your daughter has information that could hurt them, they won't stop looking." Marcus and Jennifer were in the living room when I hung up. Jennifer was examining the images on the mantel, including ones of her as a child at school, and when she was 10 years old, wearing a soccer outfit and grinning with her teeth bared. She whispered, "I'd forgotten some of these." "Look, Marcus, that's me when I was younger than you." He looked at the picture. "You look happy." She took up a picture of Richard, me, and Jennifer at the beach and said, "I was." She was probably around 12 years old. "I had a good childhood, a good family. I threw it all away because I thought I knew better." I remarked, "You were young. We all make mistakes when we're young." She put the picture down and looked at me, saying, "Did you call your friend?" "Some mistakes cost more than others. Yes, he's going to look into it and get back to me. In the meantime, we wait. And we need to think about practicalities. Marcus, you'll need clothes, school supplies if we're here long enough for you to enroll." With a startled expression, he interrupted, "School? You're 15. You need to continue your education." "But how can I go to school if we're supposed to be invisible?" He was right. "We'll figure it out. One step at a time. For now, let's focus on getting you both properly settled. Jennifer, I kept some of your old clothes in storage. You're probably a different size now, but we can go through them. And Marcus, we'll need to get you some things that actually fit." "I can't ask you to spend money on us," Jenny said. "You're not asking. I'm offering. Jennifer, I'm 74 years old with more money than I need and no one to spend it on. Let me do this." The remainder of the morning was spent in routines that were both familiar and foreign. Marcus stated he had never seen a television with real buttons before and chuckled at how antiquated it was when I showed him how to operate it. In the garage, Jennifer and I dug through boxes and discovered some of Richard's items that would temporarily fit Marcus's needs, as well as her old outfits. Going through these relics of the past with my kid standing by me felt unreal. Not only had she changed physically, albeit she seemed more worn out and smaller than I remembered, but she had also changed in the way she handled herself. She was no longer the rebellious teen who had screamed that she detested me and smashed doors. She was replaced by a weary woman who had endured unimaginable hardships. As we were folding clothing, she asked, "Mom, how did Dad end up?" Richard's old sweatshirt was in my hands as I sat back on my heels. He was at peace, mostly. We had time to say goodbye, which not everyone gets. He talked about you a lot, told me stories I'd forgotten, like the time you tried to build a tree house by yourself and ended up stuck in the oak tree for 2 hours until he could get you down. Jennifer burst out laughing. I'd forgotten that. I was so mad when he wouldn't let me do it alone. You were always independent, always wanted to prove you could handle things yourself. I looked into her eyes. That's not a bad quality, Jennifer. It just needs to be balanced with wisdom about when to ask for help. I'm learning that now. 20 years too late, but learning it. After moving the boxes inside, we sorted all afternoon. Marcus tried on Richard's old jeans and shirts, and although they were a little big, they would do until we could get him dressed appropriately. Some of Richard's old band T-shirts seemed to make him quite happy. Apparently, vintage was fashionable again. The house phone rang that night when I was preparing dinner. I picked up the phone as soon as I saw Alan's name on the caller ID. "Eleanor, I've got some information. Is this a good time?" I answered the phone and phoned Jennifer, saying, "Hold on. Can you and Marcus give me some privacy? Maybe go watch TV upstairs?" After they left, I went back to Alan. "Okay, what did you find out?" "Nothing good. The people looking for your daughter are connected to the Salazar organization out of Las Vegas. Romano, full name Victor Romano, is their money guy, controls all the financial operations. Jake Morrison was doing middle management work for them, handling drug money and providing legitimate business fronts. When he got arrested, the FBI seized a lot of financial records. And they think Jennifer has copies? More than that. Word on the street is that Jake had backup files, insurance in case he ever needed to cut a deal with the feds, names, transactions, accounts, information that could take down the whole organization. Romano and his people believe Jake gave your daughter access to these files before he was arrested. I felt sick to my stomach. Did he? I don't know. But Eleanor, here's the thing. It almost doesn't matter whether she actually has them or not. If these people think she has them, if they think she's a threat, they'll eliminate that threat. That's how they operate. How close are they to finding her? Hard to say. They've been asking questions in Nevada, checking with Jake's known associates. But if your daughter was smart about leaving, if she covered her tracks well, they might not have connected her to Seattle yet. The key is staying invisible. We can do that? Alan's voice sounded grave as he said, "Eleanor, I want you to understand something. These aren't just criminals. The Salazar organization has connections to cartels, to international crime networks. They have resources you can't imagine. If they decide your daughter is a serious enough threat, they'll put real effort into finding her. And when they do, I understand. Do you? Because I'm talking about professional killers, not just tough guys trying to intimidate someone. I'm talking about people who've made careers out of making problems disappear. I tightened my hold on the phone and closed my eyes. What should I do, Alan? Honestly, your daughter needs to either prove she doesn't have these files or she needs to go to the FBI and offer to cooperate. Those are the only two ways this ends safely. And if she can't prove she doesn't have them because they won't believe her, and if cooperating with the FBI puts her in witness protection, separates her from Marcus permanently. Alan let out a sigh. Then you've got a hell of a problem. Listen, I'm going to keep my ear to the ground. If I hear anything about them getting close to Seattle, I'll call you immediately. But Eleanor, be smart about this. These people are bad news. I lingered in the kitchen for a long time after we hung up, looking at the partially prepared supper. I had assured Jennifer that we would work things out. I had assured her and Marcus that we would protect them. But I kept thinking about what Alan had said. Professional murderers, networks of international crime, unimaginable resources. I had gotten myself into what? Marcus. What had I gotten him into? Jennifer walked downstairs and knew after seeing my face. What did he say? I didn't mince words when I told her everything. The truth was due to her. She slid into a kitchen chair with a pale face after I was done, when she remarked, I should leave. I should take Marcus and go. I can't put you in this kind of danger. My gentle question was, and go where? Jennifer, running isn't working. You said yourself you're running out of money, out of options. At least here, we have time to think, to plan. But Mom, these people, if they come here, if they hurt you because of me. I sat down opposite her and said, they won't hurt me. I'm a 74-year-old woman. I'm not the one they're worried about. But Jennifer, we need to talk seriously about options Alan suggested going to the FBI. I can't. If I cooperate, they'll want me to testify. That means witness protection, a new identity. Marcus and I would have to disappear completely, forever. We'd never see you again. I just got you back, Mom. I can't lose you again. Even if it keeps Marcus safe? She remained silent for a while. I don't know. I don't know what's right anymore. Every choice seems impossible. I grabbed her hand as I reached over. Then we'll take it one day at a time. For now, you're both safe here. We'll keep watching, keep learning, keep looking for a way out of this that doesn't require you to disappear forever. But Jennifer, you need to be honest with me. Do you have any idea where these files might be? Is there any chance Jake gave you something without you knowing it? She gave a headshake. I've thought about it constantly. He never gave me anything, never mentioned files. I barely even touched his computer or his phone. He kept all of that locked down tight. What about Marcus? Could Jake have given him something, maybe without explaining what it was? Marcus barely saw Jake. He was always at school or with friends when Jake was around. Jake wasn't exactly Father of the Year. She stopped. Though there was this one thing, about a month before Jake was arrested, he gave Marcus a guitar. Marcus had been wanting to learn for years, and suddenly Jake bought him this really expensive guitar, completely out of character. I remember being surprised. Do you still have it? It's in the car. We grabbed it when we left because it was one of the few things Marcus cared about. This bothered me in some way. Just before Jake's incarceration, he received an unexpected, costly, and uncharacteristic gift. Let's take a look at it. After persuading Jennifer to park her beaten-up Honda in the garage so it wouldn't be seen from the street, we headed outdoors. Marcus came down to assist us in bringing in the remainder of their possessions, which were not very many. The instrument case, a few bags of clothing, and a few toiletries. The Martin acoustic, which even I could tell was of excellent quality, was a stunning instrument in and of itself. We carried it inside, and Marcus handled it tenderly. "Dad gave me this about 6 weeks ago," he stated. "Just came home with it one day. Said every man should know how to play music." I questioned, "That's all he said?" "Pretty much." It was weird because he'd never seemed interested in whether I learned music before, but I didn't question it. I'd wanted a guitar for years. I took a close look at the guitar and then the case. This felt important in some way. "Marcus, has anyone else looked at this guitar? The guys who ransacked your apartment, did they check it?" He reflected. "I'm not sure. Everything was such a mess. But I don't think so. It was in my closet, and my room wasn't as torn apart as the rest of the apartment." Jennifer noticed what I was contemplating. "You think something's hidden in it?" "I think it's worth checking." The following hour was devoted to closely inspecting every square inch of that guitar. We inspected the case lining, peered through the sound hole, and looked for any concealed compartments. Nothing. Marcus interrupted me as I was ready to give up, saying, "Wait, the strap buttons." "The what?" He indicated the little metal pegs where a strap would be fastened at either end of the instrument. "These are aftermarket. They're not the ones that came with this model. I looked up the specs online when I first got it. I thought Dad had them changed, but what if—" Carefully, he unscrewed one of the buttons behind it. A USB flash drive covered in plastic was located inside a tiny opening in the guitar's body. For a time, we all stared at it, not quite believing it. Whispering, "Oh my God," Jennifer said. "Jake really did give me the files. He hid them in Marcus's guitar." I picked up the little drive with trembling hands. It seemed so harmless, so tiny. Because of this tiny bit of metal and plastic, Marcus and Jennifer were fleeing for their life. Marcus stated, "We need to see what's on it. Quickly." "Not on my computer," I said. "If these files are as sensitive as Alan suggested, we don't want them on a device connected to my internet. Alan has secure setups for this kind of thing, I'll call him." However, a new horror took hold of me even as I grabbed for the phone. The files were with us. We had just what the bad guys were searching for. We now needed to make a decision regarding them. Whether Jennifer and Marcus would be safe was no longer a doubt. Whether any of us would be was the question. That evening after dark, Alan arrived with a laptop that he told us was safe, encrypted, off-grid, and without an internet connection. A slender man in his late 60s, he had keen eyes that never missed anything. After glancing over the USB disk, he let out a low whistle. He glanced at Jennifer and said, "So Jake Morrison wasn't completely stupid after all. He kept insurance." "Did you know he'd given this to you?" "No. I had no idea it was in Marcus's guitar." He put the drive into his encrypted laptop and said, "Smart. Actually hide it in something valuable that you'd take with you but that no one would think to check." Let's see what we're dealing with. We discovered something worse than I had anticipated. Spreadsheets that show years' worth of money laundering activities. Scanned records demonstrating shell corporations, corporate fronts, and real estate purchases. Names of individuals at every level of the Salazar organization, perhaps hundreds or even dozens. Numbers for bank accounts, records of transactions as well as pictures. Jake had all the paperwork, encounters with Romano, shipment of drugs, exchanges of money, a comprehensive criminal business record that would solidify any prosecutor's case. Alan mumbled, "Jesus," as he went through each file. Morrison documented his entire operation. This is enough to take down not just the Salazar organization, but connected operations in 3 states, maybe more. Jennifer questioned, "Why would he do this? Why create records of his own crimes?" "Insurance," I responded, now that I understood. If he ever got caught, he had leverage. He could trade this information for a lighter sentence, cooperate with the FBI in exchange for protection. Marcus went on, but he got arrested before he could use it. And now they think Mom has it. Alan gave Jennifer a serious look. The people who want these files, they're not going to stop looking. And if they find out you actually have them, that you weren't lying. He didn't complete his statement. He didn't have to. Jennifer said in a little voice, "So what do I do?" "If I give this to the FBI, what happens?" "You become the government's star witness," Alan stated. "They'll want you to testify, explain how you got the files, authenticate the information. In exchange, they'll offer you witness protection, new identities for you and Marcus, relocation, the whole package. And if I don't give it to them, then you're sitting on evidence of federal crimes, which makes you an accessory after the fact. Plus, Romano's people will never stop looking for you. They'll know these files exist, and they'll assume you have them." He took a seat back. "Jennifer, I'm going to be straight with you. You don't really have a choice here. You need to go to the FBI, but that means losing my mother again. It means Marcus loses his grandmother before he really had a chance to know her. It means giving up everything for a second time." She was weeping. "I just got my family back." My own heart was breaking. We had hardly spent 48 hours together after 20 years apart. She would now have to vanish once more, permanently. No emails, no phone calls, and no other form of communication. Witnesses were completely protected. Throughout the entire conversation, Marcus had been silent, but now he spoke out. "What if we made copies? Gave one to the FBI and kept one as insurance?" Alan gave a head shake. "Doesn't work that way, kid. The FBI will want the original drive and all copies. Besides, keeping copies just makes you a continued target. The whole point of turning it over is so you're no longer a threat to these people." Marcus remarked, "But we'll still have to testify. We'll still be threats until the trials are over, and trials can take years." He was correct. Jennifer and Marcus wouldn't be completely safe, even with witness protection, until Romano and his cronies were found guilty and sent behind bars. Years of hiding, living in terror, adopting new identities, and having no ties to their former life. To me, "There has to be another way," I replied, "some option we're not seeing." We spent hours discussing every possible scenario and went back and forth. Give the FBI the files. In exchange for being left alone, try to give them back to Romano. However, how can you safely get in touch with a crime lord to return proof of his crimes? Run as far away from people as possible so they won't be discovered. But soon, money will run out and Marcus deserves a real life, not simply a life of hiding. Alan finally packed up his laptop around midnight when he said, "Sleep on it, but don't sleep too long. Every day you have those files, you're in danger. And Eleanor," he gave me a serious look, "you're in danger too now. You know about the files. You're harboring Jennifer and Marcus. If Romano's people figure out where they are, they'll come for all of you." The three of us sat in the living room after he went. Now the house didn't feel as safe. We jumped at every sound. Every vehicle on the road might be someone trying to find us. Whispering, "I'm sorry, Mom," Jennifer said. "I'm so sorry I brought this to your door." I realized our time together was coming to an end, even as I urged, "Stop apologizing. You're my daughter. This is where you belong." Jennifer would soon have to visit the FBI. There was no other sensible option. Marcus got to his feet. He kissed his mother's cheek and, to my surprise, kissed me as well. "Good night, Grandma. I'm going to bed. Maybe things will make more sense in the morning." "Good night, sweetheart." Jennifer took a seat on the couch nearer to me after he had gone upstairs. "Mom, when I go into witness protection, will you tell Marcus about our family? Will you tell him stories about what I was like as a kid, about Dad, about all the years we had together before I messed everything up?" "You'll tell him yourself, but I won't remember it all. They'll give us new names, new histories. We'll have to forget our old lives, pretend they never existed. I don't want Marcus to lose his entire past. I want him to know where he came from, who his family really was." This daughter, whom I had believed to be lost forever, drew near to me. "I'll write it all down, every story, every memory. I'll put it in a letter and give it to Alan. Maybe someday, when it's safe, he can find a way to get it to you." Knowing that this reprieve, these few days of being a family again, was soon over, we sat like that for a long time, clutching each other. However, I found it difficult to accept. A thought was developing in the back of my mind, a risky, likely stupid notion. Alan would undoubtedly declare that the notion was ridiculous, Richard would have stated that it was crazy, and any reasonable person would agree. However, I had already lost my daughter once and was 74 years old. I wasn't prepared to let her go without a fight this time. Before Marcus and Jennifer woke up the following morning, I gave Alan a call when I said, "I need you to set up a meeting." "A meeting with who?" "With Victor Romano." The other end of the line was silent for a long time. "Eleanor, tell me you're joking." "I'm not joking. I need to meet with Romano face to face." "Absolutely not." "Are you out of your mind? This man is a career criminal. He's suspected in multiple murders. I know what he is, and I know what I'm asking. But Alan, listen to me. Jennifer and Marcus have 3 options right now. 1, they go into witness protection and lose their entire lives, including each other in any real sense. 2, they keep running until someone catches them. 3, we find a way to neutralize the threat. I exhaled deeply. I think I can do that. I think I can make Romano understand that Jennifer isn't a threat to him. How? By meeting with him, talking to him, showing him that Jennifer has no interest in using those files, that she just wants to be left alone. Eleanor, people don't negotiate with the Salazar organization. You don't just sit down for coffee with a mob enforcer and work things out. I said firmly, then I'll be the first. Alan, I spent 40 years working with criminals, defending them, understanding how they think. These people operate on logic, on cost-benefit analysis. Right now, Romano thinks Jennifer is a threat because she has information that could hurt his operation. I need to convince him she's more valuable alive and quiet than dead. And how do you plan to do that? I'm working on it, but first, I need you to get me the meeting. You still have contacts in that world, people who can reach out through proper channels. Tell Romano that Jennifer Morrison's mother wants to negotiate, wants to discuss terms for everyone to walk away from this safely. He'll think it's a trap A set up by the FBI. Then tell him I'll come alone, unarmed, somewhere public. Tell him I'm a 74-year-old woman with nothing to lose and a daughter to protect. Tell him I'm willing to be reasonable if he is. Another long stillness. And if I set this up and he kills you? Then Jennifer goes straight to the FBI with those files, and Romano loses everything. That's the leverage. As long as I'm alive and we're negotiating, the files stay hidden. But if anything happens to me or my family, the files go public. I stopped. Alan, I know this is risky, but it's the only play I can see that doesn't end with me losing my daughter again. Let me think about it. And Eleanor? Don't tell Jennifer what you're planning. Not yet. With trembling palms from dread and adrenaline, I nodded and hung up. What had I done? This was crazy. Alan was right. But I saw no other option. Alan called back that afternoon when Marcus and Jennifer were upstairs. Silently, I made contact, he said. Romano's people want to meet tomorrow, 2 p.m., public park downtown. They've agreed to your terms. You come alone, they send one representative, but Eleanor, this is incredibly dangerous. These people could... I know. I'll be careful. I'm coming with you. Not to the meeting itself, but I'll be nearby. I'll have eyes on you the whole time. Thank you, Alan. Don't thank me. If this goes wrong, I'll never forgive myself for facilitating it. I observed Jennifer and Marcus together during supper that night. While they were running, she was assisting him with some homework that he had gotten behind on. With her hand resting on his shoulder and them laughing over something, they were both at ease in a way that had likely not been the case for weeks. Normal moments, safe places, and the opportunity to simply be mother and son without worry are what they deserved. To offer them that, I would stop at nothing, even if it meant placing myself in danger or sitting down with a criminal. 20 years ago, when I allowed Jennifer to leave, I had let her down. I would never let her down again. I woke up that night wondering what Richard would say if he were here. I'm sure he'd call me an obstinate idiot. However, he would also comprehend. For him, family was everything. If he could have, he would have done the same. I muttered, "Wish me luck," to his memory. I'm going to need it. The following day passed very slowly. I informed Jennifer that I would be running errands. Nothing out of the ordinary. Neither of them suspected anything. Marcus had stolen some of my old books and was deep in concentration on one about World War II. I drove to Pioneer Square, the public park where the gathering was held, downtown at 1:30. When the rain stays off and the sky turns that special shade of blue that makes you forget the dreary months ahead. It was one of those gorgeous October days for which Seattle is known. As directed, I located a bench close to the fountain. I had seen Alan follow me in his car, so I knew he was somewhere around, but I couldn't see him just now. That was probably a good thing. It also meant that Romano's people would not notice him. A man took a seat beside me at precisely 2 p.m. He was younger than I thought he would be, perhaps 40, and wore a pricey suit that didn't belong in the laid-back park environment. His black eyes scrutinized me intently. With courtesy, he said, "Mrs. Sterling?" "Yes. I'm Anthony Ricci. I represent Mr. Romano's interests. He asked me to meet with you and hear what you have to say." Romano hadn't arrived himself then, most likely intelligent. "Thank you for meeting me, Mr. Ricci." He watched kids play on the neighboring playground equipment while leaning back on the bench and saying, "Please call me Anthony." "Mr. Romano was intrigued by your request. He doesn't usually conduct business this way. I appreciate his flexibility. Before we continue, I need to make sure you understand the situation. You're aware that your daughter has something that belongs to Mr. Romano's organization? I'm aware that my daughter was given something without her knowledge or consent by her ex-partner. Yes. And you have these materials? I know where they are. Slowly, Anthony nodded. Mr. Romano wants them back. That's all he wants. He's not interested in harming your daughter or her son. He just wants his property returned and assurances that no copies exist. And if we return them, what happens then? Then everyone goes their separate ways. Your daughter is free to live her life. Mr. Romano continues his business, and we all forget this unfortunate situation ever occurred. It sounded too easy, too simple. Mr. Ricci, Anthony, I'm 74 years old. I've spent my life around lawyers and criminals. I know how these things work. The problem isn't giving back the files. The problem is trust. How do I know that once we return them, your organization won't decide my daughter still represents a risk? That she knows too much? That she needs to be silenced? You have my word. I turned to face him and said, I don't know you. And your word, though I'm sure it's valuable in your world, isn't enough to risk my daughter's life. I need something more concrete insurance of my own. A little hardness crept into his face. What kind of insurance? I want a recording. Mr. Romano on video, giving his word that if we return the files and all copies, my daughter and grandson will be left alone, that no one in his organization will ever contact them, threaten them, or harm them in any way. This recording will be kept in a safe place, and if anything happens to my family, it will be turned over to the FBI. Anthony was silent for a while. You want Mr. Romano to incriminate himself on video. I want proof of our agreement. Otherwise, we have no deal. My daughter goes to the FBI, and those files become public record in a federal trial. You're asking for a lot of trust from our side. And you're asking my daughter to trust criminals with her life and her son's life. At least my request is reasonable. He got to his feet. I'll relay your terms to Mr. Romano. Where can we reach you? Alan had given me a prepaid cell phone just for this, so I gave him the number. I'll wait for your call. I remained there for a few more minutes after he departed, watching dogs chase balls, kids laughing, and families in the park. All around me, ordinary life was going on, and I had just concluded a negotiation with organized crime agents. What had I become into? I jumped when Alan showed up at my elbow. Well, how'd it go? I informed him of my request. He had a somber expression. Eleanor, even if Romano agrees to this, a video recording isn't real protection. These people don't care about evidence. They'll kill witnesses without hesitation. But they care about exposure. If something happens to my family and that video goes public, it ties Romano directly to witness intimidation, to threats made after his organization was already under federal investigation. It makes their legal problems exponentially worse. You're gambling that they'll see it that way. I'm gambling that they're smart enough to take the easier path. They get their files back, we guarantee silence, everyone moves on. And if you're wrong, then I'm wrong, but at least I tried. 3 days later, the phone rang. After 3 days of waiting and acting as though nothing had changed, Jennifer and Marcus became increasingly agitated and worried about what might happen next. I had been frantically monitoring my prepaid phone, bouncing at every ring and buzz. Mrs. Sterling, said Anthony, Mr. Romano has agreed to your terms. He'll make the recording you requested. In exchange, you'll bring him the files and any copies. The exchange will happen tomorrow, same location, same time. I'll be there. Mrs. Sterling, Mr. Romano wants me to tell you something. He respects what you're doing for your family. He's a family man himself. But he also wants you to understand that if you're lying about the copies, if any trace of these files ever surfaces, the agreement is void. Do you understand? I understand perfectly. I spent a considerable amount of time sitting in my car after hanging up, attempting to slow down my pounding heart. This was actually taking place. I would see Victor Romano tomorrow, present him with proof of federal offenses, and hope that a career criminal would honor his promise I told Marcus and Jennifer everything that evening. Jennifer's response was furious. She paced the living room, shouting, "Are you insane?" She started to say, "Mom, these people are killers. You can't just meet with them. They could," but was unable to finish. Calmly, "They could, but they won't," I replied. "Jennifer, this is our best option. You heard what Alan said about witness protection. You'd lose everything, including each other, in any meaningful way. This way, you get your life back. You get to stay here with me. Marcus gets to have a normal childhood. All we have to give up is information you never wanted in the first place." "But what if they don't keep their word? Then we still have the recording. We still have leverage." After being silent, Marcus now spoke up. "Grandma, let me come with you, as backup, just in case." "Absolutely not. Jennifer and I both said at the same time, "Marcus, honey, the deal was I come alone. Breaking that term would destroy any trust we're trying to build. Besides, you need to stay here with your mother. If anything goes wrong, you both need to be ready to go straight to the FBI." Jennifer responded, "I don't like this," but her voice was no longer as crisp. I think she was starting to realize that this might potentially work, but I also don't have a better idea. We went over every detail for the remainder of the evening. Alan would be close again. Before turning over the information, we would make copies of Romano's tape, which would be sent to 3 different lawyers with instructions to release them in the event that we were killed. In a fundamentally dangerous environment, it was as safe as we could make it. I returned to Pioneer Square by car the following day. This time it was pouring, a gentle drizzle that complemented my attitude. Anthony was already there, waiting close to the same bench under an umbrella. However, he wasn't by himself this time. He was accompanied by an older man, perhaps 60 years old, wearing a pricey jacket and silver hair. His face was rather unremarkable, but his manner was that of someone accustomed to being obeyed. You would never guess Victor Romano's occupation if you happened to walk past him on the street. "Mrs. Sterling," said Anthony. "This is Mr. Romano." Romano held out his hand, and I hesitated for a second before shaking it. He held on tightly without becoming overpowering. "Thank you for meeting me. Mrs. Sterling Anthony tells me you're a woman who values family above all else. I respect that. And I understand you're a man who values business efficiency. I respect that." A tiny smile. "Let's take a walk." We walked along the park walks, myself in the center like some weird security detail, Romano on one side and Anthony on the other. The rain had driven most people away, leaving the park almost empty. "You put me in an interesting position, Mrs. Sterling," remarked Romano. "Your daughter has information that could cause me significant problems. But you've proposed an elegant solution. I get the information back, you get peace of mind, everyone wins. That's my hope. But you understand that this only works if I can trust you. If copies of those files ever surface, if your daughter ever cooperates with federal investigators, our agreement means nothing." "I understand. And you need to understand that if anything happens to my daughter, her son, or me, multiple copies of your video recording will be released to the FBI, the media, and anyone else who might be interested. It's mutually assured destruction, Mr. Romano. Neither of us can afford to break this agreement." After a period of silence, he nodded. A Mexican standoff. "As they say, I appreciate clarity in business dealings, Mrs. Sterling. Too many people try to be clever, to create advantages for themselves. You've been straightforward." We arrived at a more remote section of the park, far from any surveillance cameras. Anthony brought out a phone and set it up to record. Romano was in the frame, staring straight into the lens. "My name is Victor Romano. I am making this statement of my own free will. I hereby guarantee the safety of Jennifer Morrison and her son, Marcus Morrison. In exchange for the return of property that belongs to my organization, I give my word that neither I nor anyone associated with me will harm, threaten, or contact the Morrison family. This agreement is binding as long as they maintain their silence about my organization's business. If they keep their word, I keep mine." It was succinct, but unambiguous. Anthony paused the recording and played the footage for me. "Satisfied?" "I need the original file." He moved it to the USB drive that I had packed. After verifying that everything was authentic and comprehensive, I gave him the drive containing Jake's files. Romano remarked, "I presume you have copies of my recording." "Multiple copies, in multiple secure locations." He motioned for Anthony to check the USB disk I had handed them, saying, "As I expected. Smart. Anthony pulled out a laptop and spent several minutes browsing over the data. At last, he gave Romano a nod. Everything appears to be here. I was asked by Romano, "And your copies?" "Will be destroyed as long as you keep your word." He held out his hand once again and said, "Fair enough. I hope we never have reason to meet again, Mrs. Sterling. But I want you to know that I respect what you did here today. Not many people have the courage to face me directly. Not many people have a daughter to protect." I felt strangely at ease as I made my way back to my car, the rain seeping through my jacket. It was finished. To preserve my family, I had struck a bargain with a criminal, for better or worse. Richard would have assumed I was insane. He most likely would have been correct. I knew I had made the correct decision, though, when I arrived home and saw Jennifer's optimistic countenance, and Marcus rushed to greet me at the door and inquire about my well-being. Our lives were restored. Every one of us. "It's over," let them know. "Really over. You're safe now." "Thank you, Mom. Thank you, thank you, thank you." Jennifer put her arms around me and started crying. Marcus had been wanting to see a movie, so the three of us celebrated that evening with homemade pizza. I watched them unwind for the first time in weeks as we sat on the couch, my grandson on one side and my daughter on the other. At my age, I never anticipated the changes that came over the next few months. Since there was no longer any reason to hide, Marcus enrolled in the nearby high school using his true name. He joined the chess club, made friends fast, and fell in love with the debate squad. I was reminded of Jennifer when she was his age, full of possibilities and excitement, as I saw him return home every day with stories about his friends and classes. After years of loneliness in Nevada, Jennifer claimed that a modest work in a downtown bookshop felt liberating. Determined not to be a burden, she was frugal with her finances, saving every cent she could. She wasn't a burden to me, though. She was finally home, and I regarded her as my daughter. We settled into habits, pancakes on Saturday morning. Marcus had found a talent for cooking, and Sunday evening dinners were no exception. Board games were played on Wednesday nights, and Jennifer and I would play against Marcus, who was quite skilled at strategy, and we would typically lose. Jennifer had never learnt to knit as a child until I taught her. In the evenings, we sat together while I knitted Afghans for the church charity drive, and she worked on a scarf for Marcus moments of household simplicity that were priceless because we had almost lost them. Jennifer informed me sadly that we threw Marcus a party for his 16th birthday, which was his first actual birthday celebration in Nevada. She had never felt secure enough to host other children. Teenagers now live in our home, playing video games late into the night and eating everything in sight. I enjoyed every noisy, tumultuous second of it. About 6 months after everything had calmed down, Jennifer and I were enjoying a sunset while swinging on the porch. She'd gotten quieter recently, thoughtful. "Mom," she began at last, "I've been thinking about Dad." "What about him?" "I never got to say goodbye. Never got to tell him I was sorry for the things I said, for leaving the way I did. It's one of my biggest regrets." I gave her hand a squeeze. "He knew, honey. Parents always know. And he forgave you long before you ever came back. His last words were about you, about wanting you to know he loved you. I wasted so much time being angry, being too proud to reach out. What if I hadn't come back? What if you died before we saw each other again? I would have lost my chance forever. But you didn't. We got lucky. We got a second chance that not everyone gets. Do you ever regret it? Taking us in, making that deal with Romano? It was so risky, Mom. You could have been killed. I pondered this for a while. I regret the years we lost. I regret not trying harder to find you after you left. But do I regret bringing you home and doing whatever it took to keep you here? Never. Not for a second. We sat swinging softly in pleasant stillness. Marcus was laughing at something on TV inside, and I could hear it once more. There was love and life in the house. This was the intended feeling of home. Jennifer asked, "You know what the funny thing is? I spent 20 years running from my past, from you, from everything I'd done wrong. I thought I could start over and be someone different. But it turns out you can't outrun yourself. The only way forward was to come back, face what I'd run from, and try to make it right." "And have you? Made it right?" She rested her head on my shoulder as she had done in her childhood. "I'm working on it. Every day, I'm working on it." We had our Thanksgiving together a year after Jennifer and Marcus arrived at my house. It was Jennifer's first time preparing the turkey, and she insisted on doing it. Marcus created 3 pies from the ground up. I used my mother's traditional recipe to make the stuffing. The fine china, the same pieces we had used when Jennifer was growing up, was on the table. The house felt crowded, even though there were only 3 of us. Thanking God for family and second chances, Marcus said, "Grace." Jennifer shed a tear or two. I grasped both of their hands and was thankful for each second that had led us to this point. Jennifer took out an envelope while we were tidying up after supper. "Mom, I wrote you something. I've been working on it for months." There was a handwritten, multi-page letter inside. Her handwriting was the same looping style she had used in high school, but perhaps a bit neater today. It said, "Dear Mom, first. I've been trying to figure out how to say I'm sorry for 20 years, and I finally realized that no apology can undo the hurt I caused, but I can tell you the truth about what happened, about why I really left, and maybe that will help you understand." The letter continued with details she had never previously shared with me. How she felt mature and self-sufficient because of Jake's charm and excitement. How she had been too obstinate to understand that her father and I had been correct about him from the beginning. She said how she had become stuck in a relationship that she was scared to end because she was worried about what Jake would do if she did. How having Marcus, a boy she loved more than life itself, had been both the best and the worst thing in the world, but also how he had put her in a precarious situation. Near the end of the letter, it stated, "I came back not just because we were in danger. I came back because I missed you. I missed being your daughter. I missed the safety of knowing someone loved me no matter what. And I was so afraid you'd turn me away, that you'd be too hurt to forgive me, but you didn't. You opened your door and your heart, and you saved us. You saved me. I don't know if I'll ever be able to repay that gift, but I promise I'll spend the rest of my life trying." Tears were running down my face as I read it twice. After I was done, I gathered Jennifer in my arms and embraced her. I muttered, "You don't have to repay anything. You're my daughter. This is what mothers do. We love you no matter what. We forgive you no matter what. We keep the door open no matter how long you've been gone. Sitting here in this kitchen, where so much has transpired, I can now look back and see something I didn't previously. Jennifer's 20 years of absence weren't in vain. We both learned lessons from them that we needed to learn. She discovered that asking for aid is a sign of strength rather than weakness, that pride is a terrible substitute for family, and that you cannot flee from yourself. I discovered that it's never too late for second chances, that forgiveness must be prepared and waiting for when it's requested, and that letting go doesn't imply giving up. Now that he is 18, Marcus is getting ready for college. He says he wants to study law, become a prosecutor, and put those like Jake in jail or prison where they can no longer harm families. The bookstore's manager, Jennifer, has mentioned the possibility of purchasing it from the owner, who is prepared to retire. She established roots here that she never had in Nevada and developed a life. And me? I am now 76. I require reading glasses for everything, and my knees hurt more than they used to. However, I've never felt more youthful or alive. Once more, my house is filled. I have a purpose for my days. The love of my daughter and grandson has restored my heart, which I believed had been irreversibly wounded when Richard passed away. I occasionally reflect on Victor Romano and the agreement we reached. I hope I never need the insurance, so I put the recording in a safe deposit box. Alan tells me that Romano's group was slammed with federal charges that had nothing to do with Jake's files when he occasionally checks in. Romano is currently defending himself against a tax evasion lawsuit that might result in years in prison. There is a part of me that questions whether he regrets not honoring his word to us and whether he wishes he had done things differently. But for the most part, I don't give it much thought. We are currently living in the present, and that is the past. Jennifer informed me last week that she had been seeing someone. A nice man who makes her giggle is Marcus's teacher at school. Though I can see the hope in her eyes, she is anxious about it and fears making another mistake, the chance that she might still have space in her life for love and happiness. She said, "What do you think, Mom? Am I crazy to try again?" "I think," I replied, "that you're brave, that you've earned the right to be happy, that you deserve love from someone who treats you well, and I think your father would be proud of how far you've come." That's my narrative. Then I didn't anticipate having this story at 76. I assumed I would live out my last years by myself. In a house that was deserted and silently dying into old age, I'm surrounded by family instead. I'm required. I'm cherished. It's never too late. And that's the one thing I want people to take away from all of this. It's never too late to start over, make amends, forgive, or be forgiven. If you have the courage to enter, the door is always open. 20 years have passed since Jennifer left me. However, she returned, and I was prepared to welcome her home, waiting here. That's the role of family. Love is capable of doing that. It waits, it hopes, it is forgiving. It spreads its arms and greets the lost ones as they return, saying, "Welcome home, we've been waiting for you." To hear more tales like mine, subscribe, because at some point we've all been lost, and we must all understand that there is a place where we are always loved, accepted, and at home.